Being alive is the state of constantly killing your past self in an endless cycle of change and renewal, and there's no one I want to destroy more than my 16-year-old self. Responding to, "Oh, you like anime, guess you watch hentai," with a shy laugh and haha, yeah, which was not only a lie, but what the fuck, you dumb socially anxious idiot. If you're hearing this out of nowhere, then YouTube has demonetized the initial opening of this video, and sure, we aren't monetized, but I consider us temporarily embarrassed professional YouTubers, so let's take it from the top. If you currently like anime, or have ever liked anime, you have 100% come across some sort of peculiar camera shot, unnecessary animation, or a character design that looks a little too close to something you could find in the corner of the basement in Cyberdog. There are many words for this. Plot. The good stuff.
I had a question about...
But we'll be calling it fan service. I want to get this out of the way. This video will be positive, so if you want to attack us, do it now before we make points that might just change your mind. Okay, I think we're far enough into the video where I can talk a little candidly with you, without the algorithm choking this video. Humans? Fuck. Crazy, I know. But as we speak, at least a few dozen people are having sex right this moment. Maybe they're having fun, maybe it's bland and repetitive, maybe it's plain awful. Sex is as varied as the people who have it, and so there is no inherent morality to sex itself. Anime is made by human beings, for other human beings, and so may or may not depict sex. This is still neutral. Sometimes those human beings will put in elements of sex and sexuality which isn't wholly necessary for the narrative, and appeals to the audience over the characters. This is neutral. And also fan service. Generally in common usage, it's specifically sexually gratifying. The term can be used in a more general sense. It won't be in this video. This video is about the three B's: boobs, butts, and badonkadonks. Some common elements of fan service include panty shots, a camera angle that points up a skirt to show off a character's underwear, or a character moving or acting in a way that causes their underwear to be visible. Odd camera angles, a lingering or strange framing that emphasizes sexual characteristics or actions, often in a way that goes against traditional cinematography. Boob jiggle, the emphasis or unnatural movement of the breasts. A beach episode, an episode where characters go to the beach, often as a reason to show characters in swimwear, and may be logistically impractical for the genre or setting of the anime. Clothes tearing. Common in more action-focused shows, an attack or event will tear off only the outer layer of clothing, leaving a character in underwear or in such a way that keeps the genre going from ecchi to hentai. Impractical character designs. Designs that are either impractical or nonsensical to physics and a character's role. Oops, I tripped. For some reason, a character falls onto another character, often with some fun camera angles to over-exaggerate the sexuality of the situation. I bought you a towel. While a character is showering, another character very kindly brings them some kind of item, opening the door to reveal them to be naked or undressing. Again, there will be fun camera angles here. It's all in your imagination. One character imagines the situation for another character in a sexual manner. For elaborate and contrived reasons, you now have to wear these cat ears right now. Sometimes it's a maid costume. Perfectly tailored clothes. Clothing that seems to perfectly grip a character's body, showing off all their curves like they have a personal tailor on hand for all of their outfits. And many, many more. Describing these in a neutral tone was harder than I imagined. A lot of these are very gratuitous in most depictions, but that's the point. Do you know how hard it is to depict sexuality in a way that makes full logical sense and looks good to your audience? Real hard. So why would you put fan service in a show? Unfortunately, I have to do all the hard work here because no one else cares to publish academic texts on the origin of big titties in anime. Although I do appreciate Wittenfeld Mimosa, Practically Naked, fan service in anime as hyper-gendered performances of spectacle, 2020, for comparing harem anime to Pygmalion. Because I get to segue into the fact that fan service has existed since the dawn of humanity. Can I prove this? Not in any absolute terms, but you look at the inside of a pharaoh's tomb and tell me that that isn't fan service for its audience. The audience being the pharaoh. Look at the retouches of century-old portraits to fulfill contemporary beauty, or the overly dramatic waistlines of Victorian illustrations. The desire to sexually appeal and be sexually appealing is somewhat baked into us as a species because if it wasn't, well, no more species. And this is morally neutral and natural. There is nothing inherently wrong with wanting sexual gratification. It's just that until recently, for most people, it had to be more of a 3D experience, because getting a hold of the hottest cave drawing was not easy for everyone, because a wall is very heavy. But back to anime. Once humans work out a new technology, like animation, they will inevitably use it for porn. So now we've established that pornography is an inevitable part of humanity, let's get a little more specific. Why is fan service like that?
Many people have attempted to trace back the first anime boob bounce. Some say it's Gainax's 1983 Daikon 4, others have traced it back to Seinen Baraki in 1963. Gainax definitely has the edge, with people calling this style of titty gymnastics Gainaxing. So we could say they popularized it. But that was 40 years ago. What? No, it wasn't. Yes. But Daikon 4 was 40 years ago. Where did those boobies bounce to next? You can never truly codify 10 years of anything into one unified experience. For some, the 1980s was an era of ultra-violent, esoteric VHS tapes traded between friends. For others, it's the poofy hair and the sexuality of Rumiko Takahashi's entire body of work. Maison Ikoku, Ranma 1/2, and Urusei Yatsura have an unmistakable style and charm. The unabashed nudity of 80s anime shows liberation from puritanism. There's something almost neutral about the titties on display here. A fact of life, and one that should be enjoyed greatly. The charming traditional cell shading of 1990s anime is especially good when paired with some of the most physics-defying clothing known to humanity. Immaculately perky bazongas with equally perky latex, or maybe pleather clothing that cling like they are painted on. Mature women who will reasonably slap you if you ogle too long, and poses right out of a chiropractor's wet dream. Golden Boy has it all, and more. The 6-episode OVA is a joy to watch, a sexy slice of life that presents a charming walkthrough of the world's most perverse, but effortlessly talented Kentaro Ore. Each episode has a ridiculous setup to see new and exciting dimensions for a boob to bounce into, and sometimes clad in leathers, or water, or nothing at all. It is shamelessly ecchi and lovingly made. Y2K anime was an era of specifically this one fringe style. These crunchy bangs remind me of being a teen in the 2010s, playing games that reference things I didn't yet know. Big eyes and round faces, a sexuality that's timid, reserved. Anime is for the teenager, and so being about teenagers is more voyeuristic. This is somehow more sexual? To strip characters of their agency, to become mere vessels for sexuality against their will for our pleasure. Or by being abstract, can we both impose and be imposed upon? To explore sex in a distant way, a safe apartedness from our own bodies. If we're robbed of our consent, are we free from the repercussions of our own actions? In the 2010s, digital animation finally hit its stride. Clean, smooth lines and bright colors, unimaginable in the 1900s. With clarity comes simplification. Sharp shading holds less depth, less intrigue, clean-cut designs and more realistic hair shapes, but not colors. There's more anime than ever, and so there are even more types of fan service. Harem anime and the fantasy harem, isekai genre, are king, and bring quantity and archetypes to the mix. Set shapes, colors, and designs imply a character trait before they even have the time to act. The tomboy, the ice queen, the girly girl, the mature one, the murderous one, quantity and mass market appeal. Something for everyone, a decadent buffet of attributes and fetishes, pushing the edge to its limit and finding that that limit is still so close from where we used to be. Keijo was notorious for its elaborate attempts to apply sexuality, but in doing so it perverses it. In complexity, there is neutrality. In strangeness, there is absence. When you rationalize a human sexuality, you rob it of how strange it is to empathize and fall in love with lines, ideas, shapes. Love can be found in everything without need for explanation. Sex will thrive in the barest of plotlines, but can be encouraged to bloom into lovely ideas regardless. I am told Keijo has an incredibly good plot. But what will fanservice bring this decade? Will we revolt against the assumed purity, or lean more into timid reservedness?
But who is this all for? If you look around, people detest fan service. They think it makes everything worse, it undermines and corrupts and waters down perfectly good shows. But then they'll answer their own question. That's just gross shit for teenage boys. Yes it is! You're watching the genre of anime for teenage boys. Shonen. It tantalizes the way a teen boy wants, visually, exaggeratedly, more than the real world can offer him. And yet, in modern fanservice, there is still very much punishment beyond titillation. The character who gropes another character is slapped. You, teen boy, can enjoy this visually, but do not do it. That is the reward and the lesson. And then there's shoujo, fan service for the teen girls. Older, more sophisticated men who can rescue you from mundanity, take the lead and be on a more equal level. Boys who are nice and sweet and would die for you or embarrass themselves just to stand next to you. Emotional pornography, elaborate scenarios. The teen girl craves validation. She knows she is unexceptional, but wants love anyway. Wants someone to see there is more to her than her pitiful, plain body. both are for someone you are not. These people who complain are not the teen girl and teen boy of the expected audience. They know they have worth, they know they need consent. But for those teens new to the world of love, there is want and craving for the extreme of it all. Men and women who will throw themselves at you and give you what you want, and what you want is stupid because you are a teen boy, a teen girl, you know nothing. And when you grow up, you will see those fantasies as the escapism they were, reassurance and concession to hormonal cravings. And to you, complainer, I say look for the escapism, not the literality of the images on the screen. It is new, edgy, fringe feelings for fringe people who do not know what they want yet, but through this they will learn acceptance and rejection. What parts of you wish to hold on to, what parts you should leave behind. There is no morality in the desires of youths. It is neutral, ambiguous, to be shaped by the world around you and inside you. Who is fanservice for? Well, not just youths. Adults are sexual beings too. Just restrained by convention or pomp or what they know, but they still want love. They still have lust in their hearts, but it's refined. They know what it is to be loved and to be sexual. How slow it can be, how sweet, how rough around the edges. Idealizations feel hollow. It needs to be dirty and uncomfortable, begrudging and tainted. No rose-tinted glasses, just clear, green-edged glass. What do women want? They want to know it happened, happens, that their experiences are known, seen, all good and bad in between. The emotional pornography is there in the literal sense now. Feelings over visuals, experiences over the tangible, words and actions in love in its most abstract sense, pinned down into something that can be seen in lines and shapes. And the men. It is practical, a necessity but often hollow. It asks why, how, but sometimes it asks nothing at all. It just is. Their wants are just mechanical love. They ask, are you happy this way? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. Other times the answer is to change your ways. If you have what you want, will it fix you? Still neutral, maybe more so. They know right from wrong, so there's no comeuppance, no fable, just a story. Something that could have happened to you or has never happened to anyone. A story unrestrained by morality. It is bad because things are sometimes bad and sometimes they are worse. So who is fanservice for? It is for everyone, anyone, someone. Let's really address the why of it all. Why, when so many people seem to dislike it, does fanservice prevail? Well, first of all, a lot of the people who complain online aren't really the audience the people in charge are thinking of. Most of them aren't in Japan, so why would they consider them their primary audience? Look at any accidental curse word in another language mistake, and you'll see how often you're not thought about by other people. You're not giving them money, so they do not care about your opinions. This is also where you get the classic anime dub or sub that inserts weird levels of politics in for reasons. That is made for the audience of people who will complain online about there being boobs in their wholesome murder show. You can only do so much with words to change the meaning of an anime, and sometimes that changes good old heterosexual incest instead of a wholesome lesbian relationship. Now, am I saying criticizing big tits and groping is the same as homophobia? Yes. Both are very much born of the same sexual purity mindset, and I would say you could never really draw a line around one group that doesn't include some of the other. This whole video is really a condemnation of puritanical thinking, and I don't really care if that comes from hating gay people or for hating sex in general. It's ridiculous either way. You can dislike it and think it's weird, but to demand it be destroyed is, not great, and I think we should call it out more for what it is. Stupid. I do not care if it makes you uncomfortable, because you can remove yourself from the situation and stop watching it to become comfortable again. But you have no right to make others feel uncomfortable for an incredibly normal and reasonable sexual desire. So why else does fanservice still prevail? It's just dumb fun, and that isn't dumb. In later shows, sexual content is much less impactful on the overall vibe. If it's all a little goofy, some titties bouncing around may actually emphasize what it's got going on. Similarly, a lack of fanservice may create a different, but not worse, sense of the world. Fanservice shows are also often escapism shows. The world is a little bit brighter as you eye the things you like, no? Beauty makes everything seem okay. Reasonably to be expected as someone with a sexuality, you like seeing that which you are sexually attracted to. Not everything is supposed to be deep and emotionally resonant. Some things exist to entertain and delight the soul on its most basal level. Non-sexual and sexual fanservice are just the same thing. Fanservice for food, for landscapes, for sex are all equal, and sometimes shows combine the two, like Food Wars. And there is peace in the soul once more. Ad absurdum. A world like ours, but that makes no sense, where things are just off. How could you not enjoy it? It gives you everything you don't have. But yes, fanservice can feel out of place. But not all sexual scenes are fanservice. That scene from Goblin Slayer that was criticised for being sexual wasn't ever fanservice. It was uncomfortable and violating. Discomfort was the correct emotion to seeing it, not titillation. This is rape, not sex. It is sexual, but not positive. The High Priestess design is fanservice. You're supposed to enjoy this one. The two can exist simultaneously, and balancing when and where fanservice goes can be done well and not well, as with any attribute. I'm not saying all fanservice is good, but I am saying most fanservice isn't bad. Outside of outright encouraging negative stereotypes or sexualizing sexual abuse, it's normally at best neutral. But I wouldn't try to destroy it, because I would be a hypocrite. I love violence in anime, I love ultra-violence and ridiculous torture and gore, but I would never enjoy that happening in real life. As cool as I think assassins are, I'll cry at real-world death because it's different. I know what is and isn't cool, I can separate fiction and reality, and so I keep myself in balance. Controversial, I know, but apparently it needs to be said that just because you like fanservice doesn't mean you'll commit some of the worst actions a human being can do. I just don't understand why sanity goes out the window like a rock when it's sex. Like I said before, why is there sex in my wholesome murder anime? People just do not see violence. I have theories on this. The idea that for most people, sex is more real than violence because they may have actually experienced sex, but not so much the violence. It could equally be the inverse, where the only sex they know is fictional, so they have no concept of their own personal boundaries. Watching something and feeling it are worlds apart. I also have theories on this idea, but I'll stop talking about my amateur sexual anthropology and go back to talking about anime. Having lighter sexual elements for the audience to enjoy isn't wrong either. It can help break up the pacing or encourage liking certain characters. You're supposed to like this one, want this one to be safe, because you like seeing her, him, them on the screen. So why do people like fanservice? They're supposed to. You're being told this character has aesthetic value, and sometimes that's good for the narrative, and sometimes that's why you own too many figures of Rim from ReZero, because they keep making cute new outfits for her. What am I supposed to do? Not spend money I don't have importing figures from Japan? Crazy talk. So now we know the what, when, why, and who of fanservice, let's explore some more specific ideas within the concept as a whole. One idea I always come back to is the idea that age is just a number. Now hang on with me for a second here. So more specifically, it is that age is just a number that correlates to some sort of marketing decision. We discussed in our demographics video about how a key way to distinguish between shonen and seinen, and shoujo and josei, is to look at the age of the protagonists. If it's shoujo and shonen, you're probably going to see a core cast of younger teens, and for josei and seinen, it's probably going to be anywhere from uni students to young adults to working professionals. This is because the easiest way to get your audience to relate to your characters is to match them in key demographics. This isn't just age, but also gender, sexuality, and profession. Now the reason this becomes relevant to fanservice is because a lot of these shonen and shoujo characters aren't actually teenagers. They're not real. Any age applied to them is just a number. And this spills out into associated attributes. Why are all these teenagers saving the world after school? Why are they able to act way more rationally than an actual 14-year-old? Well, that's because they're not 14. They're fictional. When people bring up a character's age, I'm always a little confused because I thought this was kind of an open arrangement everyone knew about. This character isn't 14. They're an ambiguous teenager, with more suffering than any living person could handle. They're whatever age you are to be most relatable. Sure, there are set numbers. They don't make any sense. That 5'8" anime boy wouldn't weigh 50 kg. That big titty anime girl doesn't have a bust size of 110 centimeters. They're just numbers on a vague scale of understanding. He's average height and weight, and she's a H cup, but no one knows what comes after D. It's all just a cultural shorthand for big or small. If you set My Hero Academia in a university, what would actually change? It's all just dressing for the story trying to be told. And in My Hero, sometimes that story is we're having to send our children to war in unprecedented times. As weighty as that is, they could all be 18 and it would still be roughly the same story. Very little changes in anime if your character is 15 or 22. It's just a creative or marketing decision. It's just if they go to school or work, if they live alone or with parents. There's little in it that often actually informs a character's decisions or motivations. It's vague and tentative, just the right shapes and colours to appeal to teens or adults. It's ludonarrative dissonance, but for manga and anime, so I guess it's just dissonance. Narrative dissonance. And sometimes for that, there is overcompensation. Make the tits bigger, so you know this is a sexually mature and appealing character, even if for some reason you've slapped the age of 12 on them, and it just all doesn't make sense. You're supposed to want to fuck this cute little dragon, so she's 500 years old, and acts with the maturity of an adult despite her form. Some people will do something interesting with this compensation, and at other times they won't. It's all just a visual language to communicate how much you should want to fuck this character, and how much money you should spend on merch of them because of that. Okay, so now we've worked out the issue comes when you start applying sexuality to these marketing number ages. But why wouldn't you? I've never been a teenage boy, but I was a teenage girl, and I was heavily interested in sexuality. Maybe in a more academic way, compared to the usual, but I still wanted to see sexuality. I would argue this is the same for most teenagers. It's a known fact that hormones from puberty increase libido, so anything aimed at that demographic is going to want to appeal to that. The expression of this varies across gender and other attributes, but it's there. The audience wants it, and if it can be done in a safe capacity, why shouldn't teenagers be allowed that expression and representation?
I wasn't a teenage girl, but I was a teenage boy, and I can tell you that those shitty fanservice harem shows were the shit. I loved them. From Love Hina to Rosario Vampire to Shuffle, getting to pick my favourite girl and impress myself upon the blank slate protagonist was exactly what they intended when they made it. Enjoying and exploring sexuality in a safe way. As I'm now older, they're not quite as effective as my tastes have changed, but there's a whole new generation of teenage boys who will definitely love them.
There are of course downsides to this. Teens are equally horny as they are insecure, so when presented with idealized sexuality, they aren't equipped to distinguish fantasy and reality. The solution to this is just to have more realistic fantasy in the mix. Not every show, no, but when you cut out the idea of teenage sexuality as a market, you're also robbing them of being given approachable sexuality, relatable sexuality. It's like media abstinence. When we won't discuss these ideas, they're not prepared for the reality of them. The removal of sexuality creates teenagers who will seek out these things in non-teenager spaces. Spaces that are not trying to cater to their squishy, undeveloped brains, and may propose ideas that are above their ability. And no one in the situation is doing anything wrong. The adults aren't wrong to make these spaces for themselves, and the teens aren't wrong for being curious. But by demonizing teenage sexuality, we create an overall hostile environment for everyone involved. You cannot get angry at the foxes in your garden when you destroyed all the woodlands. This isn't an issue that's just contained to anime. I mentioned the loss of sexuality when breaking down fan service for the decades, but this decrease in sexuality is in all media. Everything is just kind of smoother. No harsh edges. If you depict sex, you're doing something wrong. You're catering to perverts and degenerates. Real people have sex behind closed doors through a hole in the sheets, and we don't ask questions about anything more than that, or we're freaks. Sex is a punchline, a joke. It is lesser yet more than anything else, so we cannot talk about it. I want to talk about it. Sex is morally neutral and should be treated with the weight of any other element of a story. Is it suitable for the context? And since anime isn't the only medium at play here, let's talk about Western fan service. First of all, despite what people think, it is absolutely real. From cartoons to live action, there is fan service. Not in the general sense, but in the sexual sense. In terms of live action, the fan service will always be lesser. A pale imitation of the boundaries imagination and line art can push aside, the ignorance or denial of physics. Live action is mostly constrained to what can be. So we see it in short skirts, well-tailored suits, and perfect hair and makeup from the moment they wake up. People with well-crafted bodies beyond the realities of their lives. It doesn't make sense that every man is ripped and every woman is a perfect hourglass. And I would argue this is more harmful than some Jiggly Biggyls. Real people made to look like this through rigorous exercise, unsafe practices, only to still be tweaked in post-production for the crime of having wrinkles at 35. So separated from reality, but so convincingly normal people forget this is curated. A few seconds from a 24-hour day, 25-year-old 14-year-olds with unobtainable bodies for their age. Is it not better to know it isn't real from the outset? On some basal level, I cannot see these images the way I see a person. The line is drawn so heavily there that any escapism is true escapism, because I could never be there. It's satisfyingly impossible. But anytime I watch something live action, I come out of it covered in the sticky residue of the personalities of every character I just saw on screen, no matter the film, just for a second. Watching anime mostly makes me wish I could draw girls with big tits, and write video essays about said tits. Now I am condemning the execution of this type of fan service, not the existence. Human sexuality is neutral, no matter the medium. I don't want to see actors dying of dehydration for perfect pecs, and I don't want animators to sleep under their desks to get a panty shot out in time. But the actual depictions are neutral, regardless of being cartoon, or anime, or live action, or Japanese, or American, or English, or Korean. It even exists for the same reason, because it turns out wanting sex is a pretty universal trait. It's just the cultural expressions that vary. Western media tends to crave a sense of realism. Even the fantastical should be explainable. How does the dragon fly with a wingspan that small? What are the quantum mechanics of being able to manipulate fire? How would she walk upright with titties bigger than her skull? This is in part an extrinsic issue with fandoms of these media, but absolutely bleeds into the writing itself. There's so much less fantasy media in the West. I have no data to back this up, but the vibes imply I'm right. And this is also a more recent development. Now I have a degree in media studies, so if I had to guess using the information I was given, then this was absolutely because of 9/11. That shift from fantasy to grimdark realism is pretty well studied as being a direct response to the attacks. But back to boobs. The slow panning shots, lingering detailed close-ups, these are fan service. And then as we mentioned before, there's emotional fan service. It is still sexual, but more abstract. People with inexplicably high-paying jobs, designer clothes that perfectly tailor to their bodies, but still all the time in the world to be with you. It's also just marketing, and abstract traits divorced from the character's actions and behaviors. It's just set dressing. Sitcoms and slice of life anime are the same genre. There's less acceptance for exploration in sitcoms due to puritanism, so you don't get harems in Western media. Yes, get annoying on-again, off-again relationships, so you can explore the potential for all possible relationships, but not at the same time. I say just let them fuck all the characters, you cowards. This also applies to harem anime actually. Reject decisions, accept polygamy. In conclusion, we should embrace the full spectrum of human sexuality in all its rough-edged glory. And doing so means accepting things exist that you don't like, and that's just really for you to deal with and not to enforce on anyone else. When we truly accept human sexuality as neutral, we will be able to experience, analyze, enjoy media in a healthier, more comprehensive manner, and also be able to talk about it without panicking and condemning it, just in case someone calls you a freak for liking High School of the Dead or My Dress Up Darling. So yeah, I have a lot of opinions on fan service, so thank you for staying until the end to listen to my theories.
I've waited years for someone to ask me about my theories!
Hopefully you can take something from this, even if it's just an openness to enjoying a show with a little more fan service, just to see it for the story it has to tell, or the emotions it wants to inspire in you, even if those emotions are lust. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you hated it, tell us why in the comments. If you're nice and respectful, we may even reply. Bye bye!